Horror movies allow us to face our own fears, explore the dark side of humanity, and even question our own surroundings in a safe and controlled environment. But that doesn't mean that we can be prepared for everything that comes sailing down the storm drain towards us. Some directors like to hide their twists and turns, some marketing firms like to get us sat in a paid-for seat before the really unforgivable stuff starts flowing, and in some instances, there are just certain things you can't really advertise to the general public. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 more horror movies way weirder than advertised. Number 10, From Dusk Till Dawn. On the surface, Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn looks like another 90s crime thriller cut from the Tarantino mold. And the fact that Quentin Tarantino himself stars in it as a literal criminal on the run doesn't actually help matters. Alas, for anyone seeking Reservoir Dogs 2, Dusk Till Dawn will be a sore disappointment. The film tracks brothers Richie and Seth Gecko from their latest bank robbery through several chance encounters before they wind up at the Titty Twister bar in Mexico. All they have to do is hide out in the club until dawn, when they can meet their underworld contact and get gone for good. Unfortunately, one thing leads to another, and the brothers find themselves fighting for their lives with the club's employees, a horde of vampires. Few films have taken more of a sharp left turn at the midpoint than this one, ditching not just the crime plots but the tone and style of the picture in favour of something remarkably different, a rip-roaring, super wacky monster movie. Number 9, Men. Cast as the latest film in the UK's long-standing folk horror tradition, the trailers and posters for Alex Garland's Men promise something uncanny and profoundly disturbing. And it certainly didn't disappoint on that front. After witnessing the suicide of her abusive husband, Harper Marlowe heads to the country to get away from it all. Unfortunately, as all city folk know, the country is a backwards, foreboding and nigh-evil place. Her semi-idyllic getaway is turned into a living nightmare by a series of uncannily similar-looking men who watch, harass, harangue, and just generally scare the living daylights out of her, all played by the unexpectedly versatile Rory Kinnear. But that's not all. There is a certain much deeper vein of weirdness that the marketing material simply couldn't capture in the posters and 90-second promos. In the third act in particular, the film descends into full-on body horror territory, with green men, visceral injuries, and men giving birth to men who give birth to men. Well, you get the picture. Number 8, The Haunting. Gathering together a gang of big 90s faces, including Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Owen Wilson, 1999's The Haunting remake first leads us up the garden path in the direction of a clever supernatural/psychological mystery, daring us to ask whether the titular haunting of a big old mansion house is just a social experiment by a slightly unethical scientist, or the work of some bona fide ghosties. Well, spoiler alert, it's the latter. Believe it or not, it is based on Shirley Jackson's famous novel The Haunting of Hill House, and if this was the path the film followed, then fine, we could work with that. Unfortunately, The Haunting takes some major CGI-driven liberties in its course, and thoroughly loses the plot and any consistency of tone somewhere around the time Owen Wilson is decapitated. The iffy effects give it a cartoonish feel, but its unyielding grim sincerity and far-fetched explanation of everything makes the whole affair unbearably weird, and not in the so-bad-it's-good kind of way. Number 7, Pearl. Ty West's love letter to 70s slashers X came out of left field in 2022, demonstrating just how much can be done with a simple setup, compelling characters, and one of the newest queens of the horror scene, Mia Goth, on board. X was weird enough in and of itself, with Goth playing the dual role of porn star protagonist and kooky OAP antagonist, but the film didn't quite prepare us for what came next, or in the X universe, previously, Pearl. In Pearl, West takes us back to ex-antagonist Pearl's roots, with Goth going full tilt from long-suffering daughter to rampant killer in a little over an hour and a half, completely losing her marbles in the process. While the trailers forecast the rise of a psycho killer, they couldn't have prepared us for quite how unhinged Pearl gets. Nor could it have prepared us for the surreal tone West sets up early on and maintains through scarecrow dance numbers, a murdered father rotting in the front room, and a final minutes-long grin over the end credits. Number 6, Junkhead. Set in a far, far distant future where humans are infertile and nearly extinct, Junkhead charts the story of a cybernetic explorer who is cast down into the literal underworld where a host of grimly depicted artificial species live. So far, so mad God, right? Unlike Phil Tippett's magnum opus of the form, however, this film sets its sights on the research rather than the destruction of the terrifying hell world below. The protagonist is brutalized, destroyed and rebuilt by a series of monsters and faces a plight of scenarios on his journey to discover a new kind of society that, despite how gut-churning it is, kind of works. Still the sleepiest of sleeper hits, barely out of hibernation and nowhere near the mainstream, the film nonetheless did have a trailer, and that trailer couldn't prepare even the hardiest viewer for the off-the-wall weird horrors to come. Number 5. Crimes of the Future. Starring Viggo Mortensen, director David Cronenberg's latest hit of horror, Crimes of the Future, instead takes us to a vaguely recognizable future Earth, where the technology is a mix of old and new. Nobody feels pain, and surgery is the new sex. We all knew it was going to be a return to form for the body horror master, but nobody knew just quite how weird it would be, or how curiously horny. In this world, people grow, tattoo, and publicly remove new organs, getting off by cutting each other open and rummaging around inside. A strange art world satire, the film delves into a largely unexplored side of transhumanism and the peccadillos of a human race on the cusp of true evolution. And yet, its satire is played almost completely straight, making every scene all the stranger, loaded as they are with quirky, full-on performances. Ever wanted to see Viggo go rolly-eyed with his chest open? Fancy catching an interpretive dance with a many-eared man who has sewn his mouth and eyes shut? Well, step right up. Number 4. Gremlins 2: The New Batch. 1984's Gremlins took the horror world by storm, managing to cram cute, funny, and Christmas into a movie where monsters destroy buildings, vehicles, and homes, and murder the good townsfolk of Kingston Falls, USA. Suffice to say, however, when a much-anticipated sequel arrived 6 years later, fans of the original movie had no idea what was coming. Gremlins 2: The New Batch takes the little monsters to the big city and unleashes them upon a futuristic, full-service skyscraper. They get wet, stay up till God only knows when, and eat till their little bellies burst. But this time, they don't mess around with baseball bats and toy cars. Oh no, they break into the science lab, crack open a few vials of ominous neon liquid, and begin sculpting their own evolution. The movie is a riotous bucket of weird and so much more unhinged than its predecessor. It's got Christopher Lee, a Hulk Hogan cameo, a bespectacled and fully articulate brain gremlin, a mid-movie fourth wall break, and even a almost certainly coercive human gremlin wedding. And that's not even mentioning Rambo Gizmo versus Spider Mutant Stripe in the third act. All I can say is roll on Gremlins 3 and whatever places that may take us. Number 3. The House. Despite being advertised as a horror up front, the trailer and Netflix clips had most of us believe The House would be a twee, Wes Anderson-esque stop-motion animation with a slightly spooky tone. Not so. With a quartet of directors lending each segment their own unique style, the film is a tri-pronged anthology movie dancing in turns between serene dioramas and icky nightmare fuel set in felt and wool. The first segment features a bulbous-headed Edwardian family who moves into a fancy modern house before it turns on them. The second features a property developer and anthropomorphic rat who has a sinister infestation of fur beetles and larvae. And the third centres on a makeshift family of anthropomorphic cats in a post-apocalyptic future. Far from the scattershot approach of the ABCs of death, The House manages a consistent aesthetic between three stories that, while they don't necessarily dovetail, feel comfortable presented alongside each other and are joined by the titular theme. Each segment has its own branch of horror to explore, whether gothic, visceral, or just plain surreal, and a voice cast to match, with the likes of Helena Bonham Carter offering some serious horror credibility. It's kooky, it's weird, and it's not something to watch while eating. Number 2, Bones and All. Anyone who saw the trailer for Bones and All, you know, the one with the moody Leonard Cohen music, a windswept Timothée Chalamet pouting for all he's worth, a strange and beautiful love story blossoming between two youngsters fighting for their existence on the streets, knows that the director has a lot of explaining to do. Sure, the trailer offers up a bit of blood, a bit of implied murder, an ominous overtone, but who knew this was going to be an all-out cannibal film with a finger degloving, a bloody patricide, and a creepy older stalker? Fans certainly had no idea what was coming. Even fans of cannibal and vampire movies, especially teen vampire movies, will be turned off in all the places they might hope to be turned on. Weird doesn't quite cut it, but it's still one hell of a ride. Number 1, Honeymoon. Honeymoon is a supernatural horror with all the trappings of a psychologically tinged kitchen sink affair, but which goes out with the bathwater pretty quick. Rose Leslie and Harry Treadaway star as honeymooning couple Bea and Paul, whose idyllic trip to a rustic cabin in the sticks turns, well, weird. We've seen the premise plenty of times before. Partner starts displaying uncharacteristic behaviour, histories, tensions and mental illnesses bubble to the surface, everything ends in a climax of human drama, and directors of the ages have gone to work on the idea, resulting in everything from a double-crossing, duplicitous partner, think 2013 side effects, to multi-fictional breakdowns. And yet, Honeymoon abandons the purposely psychological elements, accounting for Bea's strange behaviour with something deeper, darker, and far from home. Bright lights buzz the cabin windows, strange goo appears on Bea's clothes, and then there's the vaginal worm. Nothing is what you expect, and the conclusion is sure to split any audience down the middle. And that concludes our list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.